Fantastic. Thank you. So very excited to be introducing our first speaker for the day. So Dr. Emily Agard earned her Bachelor of Science with honors in Life Sciences at Queen's University and her PhD in Immunology from the University of Toronto. She's taught biology at York University and the University of Toronto at Scarborough before joining Ryerson as an associate professor. Currently, as the director of the SciXchange at Ryerson University, she's passionate about making science accessible, engaging, and inclusive for all groups. So let's give a round of applause for Dr. Emily Agard.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, good. So I thank you all for being here. I'm very happy and no pressure that Doina put on me there to make this really good. So thank you for doing this. This type of event is great. And also, I didn't realize that age diversity was part of it. And looking across the room, I'm realizing that I'm one of those at the end of the spectrum for the age diversity, but it's nice to see. It's nice to see lots of young faces here. So how many of you are students here, just to have an idea? Okay, see, good. So I was asked to tell my STEM story in 15 minutes or less and impart words of wisdom. A lot of what I have to say, hopefully, are things that you've heard before, and maybe you've heard them so many times that you think they're cliche, but I'm here to tell you that a lot of them really are true. So when it comes to my STEM story, it is, I can't start without talking about where my story began. So I'm not going to make this a whole life story, but I have to at least mention where things began with me and my love of STEM. It really started with my parents who weren't even scientists. So my two parents, they both immigrated here. My mom's from Grenada and my dad's from Barbados. Grenada is the island of spice. And Barbados is known for the sugar, so I'm always boast that I'm a nice combination of sugar and spice and everything nice. And they came here. My mom came here in the 50s, and my dad came here after that from England. He had done a law degree at the University of Manchester. When he came here, he had to do that all over again. So he was a lawyer. My mom was a teacher, and I learned the scientific method from them, which is interesting because we think of scientists as being the ones who have all of the scientific methods and all of the logic, but the scientific method and the love of STEM and the concepts of STEM can be found everywhere. So that was one thing that I learned growing up. And how did I get into STEM? I think I was always into STEM. I didn't really know that I was into STEM, but I was always curious. I was always the person putting things together in the household. A gas barbecue comes in 1,000 different pieces, let me tell you, but I was the one putting these things together. I always have been interested in, and there was once I was listening to the radio and I heard Sarah Silverman mention, we should stop telling girls to be whatever they want. I'm like, what do you mean we should stop telling them that's not true? And then she's like, that makes them think that they couldn't be everything they want. We're born already knowing that we want to do things. We're born already curious. So a lot of the movements now, when we're talking about these things, we have to remember that a lot of the ideas and a lot of the, I hate math and I can't do science, these aren't things that are natural. These aren't things that aren't thoughts that should be in people's heads. These are ideas that people get from the bad experiences they have and the prejudices that people have against them. So when I first really realized that I was interested in STEM, I think it started around, just one slide. I think it started around when I was my little 9-year-old self. I don't know if any of you ever used this textbook, but that's me on there. So I have to mention, I shouldn't have mentioned that it was me. My husband said, don't tell them that it's you, see if they can figure it out. So the principal of our school, Frank Flanagan, he was really into science. We had great science fairs, so that was one of the things that was lucky for me. And and he invited us to be on the cover. That was my first paid gig. I got $10 for that shit. And I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, so there were probably only about 3 Black children in the school, so I was one of the ones on the cover because we had to have that diversity. Just throwing that out there. But I was also very interested in science, and I would say, I'm putting this up here not just to show that I was on the cover of a textbook, but this is when I became more aware of my love of science. So grade 4 was around when we had science fairs. My school was very lucky. We had really, really good science fairs. I thought that was what everyone did, but I'm realizing now that a lot of schools don't have science fairs, which is a shame. So we're at my office, we're trying to work with schools to get science fairs back into schools. So I was very interested. I was always interested in science. I didn't think of necessarily having a career in science. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I thought with my dad, we'd be Agard and Agard one day. And but I was always curious. So then I went to high school, took all the sciences, took all the maths. There were 5 years to do it back then. Took all of them. And then when I went to Kingston, when I went to Queens, I studied life science. I was still planning on being a lawyer, but I studied life science because I thought science was so interesting. So looking back, that should have been a clue. But I thought, at the time, I was just following what I was interested in. I really, really, really loved sciences. I did life sciences, but while I was there, I also stretched my brain in other directions. So I took art history, I took languages. I love to travel. I can't remember how many countries I've been to and how many languages I've tried to study, but I've always been interested in various different things, but science was always the center of a lot of it. And then in 3rd year, I took an immunology course. And in 4th year, I took another immunology course. And at the end of those courses, I had more questions than I had answered. In the textbook, every second paragraph, the mechanism is still not known. Mechanism is still not known. I said, I want to learn this mechanism. I want to figure out this mechanism. So at the time, I applied to graduate school. I wanted to find an immunology program. At the time, U of T had probably the best one in the country. I applied to it, got in. At this time, I still didn't think I was going to have a career in science. I don't know. I think I should have clued in by then. Decided to do my PhD in immunology and still didn't think for sure that I was going to have a career in science. I just loved science. I just studied science. I just wanted to do it. While I was in grad school, I took some teaching courses. And I started really liking that idea of imparting knowledge and facilitating learning. And when I finished my PhD, I did a short postdoc at York, and I did some teaching, and I really, really loved it. And then I found myself being a lecturer at York. I was on contract, so it wasn't a permanent position, but I did that for a few years. I taught at U of T Scarborough for a few years. I think back to the energy I had going back and forth between campuses, working, teaching all these different courses. And then the opportunity at Ryerson came along. Now, while I was at York, I had been doing outreach in the Jade and Finch community, just meeting with kids, working, giving them talks, bringing my students to the Westview Centennial High School that I would visit, letting my students see how bright the Jade and Finch kids were, because, there are assumptions, as Joyner was talking about, of the aptitudes of kids from certain neighborhoods. So it was a learning experience for my students at York to go in and talk to the youth and see how bright they were. And I get comments like, wow, they were really bright. And I'm like, why are you surprised? So that's a topic for another day. We can discuss racism and all of that on a totally different day. But I was very interested in outreach, and it was something I was doing for fun. Then when I went to Ryerson, it turns out that they were very interested in all of the outreach that I was doing at York, and that's part of what helped me land my position at Ryerson, and that's part of what made me realize that Ryerson was really the place that I needed to be. So I started there as an associate professor. I was teaching anatomy and physiology. I taught immunology, and then I was still continuing to do outreach on the side. So this was in 2008, before we actually had a faculty of science. We were tucked in with engineering and architecture. Then we got our own faculty of science, and we had our founding dean, Dean Imogen Coe, whom we will be hearing from this evening. And she's a woman who gets it. She gets diversity, she gets inclusivity. And she was seeing the work that I was doing in the office, our small outreach office that felt like just an offshoot of what I was doing as a biology professor. And she decided to make outreach the center, or one of the central pillars within our faculty. And then the office as we have it now was born. We rebranded, we did market research, we interviewed with teachers, some of whom are in the room, and we designed our programming, and we're still expanding, we're still trying to figure out new directions to go. And we are now known as SciXchange at Ryerson University with a vision to increase science literacy, increase science engagement. It's not all about everyone necessarily needing to have a direct career in science, but everyone should feel access to science. To have access to science, everyone should feel welcome in a science environment. Everyone should not be afraid of science. Everyone should be able to apply science in everything that they do. So, and use science to make policy-based decisions. So that's pretty much what we are all about at SciXchange. And diversity and inclusion and equity are central to what we do. It's not just taglines. We're very committed to it. For example, one summer when I was looking to hire 3 students, top 3 applicants were male at the time. So I thought, okay, could I hire these females? I could. They would do a great job. Do I hire the 4th applicant just because she's a female and she'll just be the token female? No, that's not really the option that I had decided to take either. So what I did was I went out and tried to recruit a top female. So I found a female who was better than the 3 males, and I hired her. And that's what we have to do, because we want to make sure that we are providing opportunities for everybody. And diversity doesn't mean a room of all women. Diversity means bringing everybody who has different things to talk about, and bringing everybody who has different perspectives, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different subject backgrounds. This summer, one of my team members was a male midwifery student whom we brought to the table, and he had all of his different perspectives. So my advice to those of you who are looking to get into STEM, do follow your dreams, do look for networks, do look for support. And networking isn't just about handing out business cards or collecting business cards at events like this. It's just talking about what you're interested in. You could be at a sporting event and meet someone who is of interest to you. So always be curious, always be following your passion. My job, Director of SciXchange, I did not do a degree of Director of SciXchange. This is a position that evolved out of the passions and out of the work that I was doing. So really follow that. Now, in the workplace, I was asked to speak about the work environment too. It can be hostile for women, but that doesn't mean that women shouldn't be there. That means that we should be making the place a better place. We should be calling out the Tim Hunts. We should be calling out the Harvey Weinsteins. We should be calling out all of these people who make the workplace a difficult place for the underserved. And for the record, women are not a minority, so I don't want to be talking about women as a minority group. We represent 50% of the population. So in closing, I know that my time is coming up. I'm passionate about this. My voice gets all, my blood starts boiling when I think about certain things. But really do follow your dreams. You've heard that before. Do what interests you. Don't let people discourage you. Don't let that little voice inside of you discourage you. And look for support. Ask for help. I'm learning to do that. Ask for help. You can't do everything yourself. And ask questions. Learn from your mistakes. All of these are life lessons that we all learn. And that's what I have to say to you.